Welcome to episode 14 of Lemme Finish. I am your host, Figure 8. The last couple episodes we've had some guests on, and I've been doing my best to finish up my research so I can round out the rest of the season. We're getting incredibly close to the end of 2018, and next season we'll start with 2019, and that is a large year for us. But yeah, I'll save that talk for the next season. I got a few points I'm going to go over, a few more big events. I'm not sure if it'll be all of this episode or this episode and the next one. But then after that, my goal is to get as many episodes as I can with the fish that we've discussed here to get a different perspective on all these stories. I've really liked the episodes we've done so far with Ned, Tag, Janessa, and Lai. I'll probably have all of them come back along with Chris, Gareth, and anyone else I can get if I can line it up. So I left off at one point talking about the shroom trip that ended it all, and we haven't gone back there. That almost ended it all. We used to do some psychedelics in that Troutdale house. I will cop to being a part of that for sure. And I don't love shrooms. When I do shrooms, a lot of the times, like if you Google it, it's a thing. Like psilocybin makes my legs freeze up. They hurt really bad, but it also doesn't hurt. Like it doesn't stress me out when it happens. I don't do shrooms anymore, but it doesn't stress me out. It didn't stress me out. So I was still okay with doing them. It just meant I kind of had to pick a spot and sit there. And it didn't happen every time, but it happened a lot. And it happened this particular time after a show. I don't even exactly remember what period it's in. I just will never forget the night. I was laying down in the grass and I was having such a good time. Then out of nowhere, I started freaking out. And young Ned came over and sat by me, and I was just like, I suck. All my music sucks. Like every single song sucks. And he's like, nah, you have some good ones. And I was like, name one. And he just stared at me for a minute. And I was like, see? And he was like, what about Channel? And I was like, if Channel's the best thing I have after 10 years of trying to do this, I need to quit. And he went back and forth defending me and the work I had done. And I had a lot of Uno reversed cards for him about all I hadn't done and how poorly I had handled getting to this point. But by the end of it, by the end of the resolution, whatever the fuck you want to say, I do think he got me to understand that I had done the best I could with what I had. So right around here is when I got the beat for what would eventually become All Night. And the next day after that shroom trip, or maybe a couple days later, I was walking around PetSmart with my sister, and I had the beat in my headphones, and I pretty much wrote the entire song walking around that PetSmart that day. And I did some of it for my sister, and she was like, you have to record this now. And I went to B Mages, and I stayed an extra 3 hours longer than the session was booked for. We just worked on this one song, and yeah, I showed it to Swiggle, I showed it to a couple of the fish, and everyone was like, this is one of them ones. Shawty wanna fuck all night. That I believe I actually ended up performing that at the Ramps and Amps show that I talked about recently. The one where I met Avery and Dirty Black and Vincent is Sad and all those people. I think that was the first time I performed it, and that was like a big part of me not looking like such a fucking loser anymore in front of all those people that I saw there. But anyway, that song kind of came from Timmy telling me I sucked, and then me realizing I sucked on that shroom trip, and just kind of shifting how I thought about writing a song and how I created music. I was so used to not rapping on a beat and rapping at either an invisible enemy or someone actually in front of me that I'm trying to battle and freestyle. I didn't know how to make a song, and like I understood music. I liked music. I've always loved music, especially hip hop, obviously, but I just didn't know how to craft it into an actual structural piece of art. And somehow that was the beginning of it. I know that I had done Icarus and one or two things that were okay, but All Night was for sure the first song that I wrote that was like, this is a song worth listening to, worth performing. And yeah, so anyway, we used to do shows at this place called The Lux, I think that's what it was called. It was off Stark, kind of towards Gresham. And it was a hookah lounge, and that shit was fucking beat. All the couches were ripped up, all the floors were dirty and stained, all the pool tables were ripped up. The bitch was always fucking empty. But I kind of, that was, again, I mean, I'll say yes to almost any show still, but that was especially during a time where I just wanted to meet people. I just wanted to get outside. I just wanted to practice performing. Because people are like, you're wasting time doing those shows for nobody. But it's like, if my first show was for somebody, I wouldn't have had the experience of how to perform better and which songs people like and this, that, and the other thing. So unless you have a huge demographic of people you're releasing to, I'm a firm believer in you need as much stage practice as you can, because when that first show comes along, you don't want it to be your first one, that first big show. Like, you don't want your very first time performing in front of people to be at the Moda Center. I mean, I've performed thousands of times now. I would say every time I've gotten that big opportunity, I'm much less scared than I would be. I'm much more confident than I would be had I not had all this experience. So we said yes to the Lux a lot. It's one of the few places we would also say no to, but we said yes a fucking lot. And it always went okay. A lot of the times we at least had fun, smoked some weed. A lot of the times it ends in a fight outside for some reason. But the Black Pioneers, who DJ'd our me and Tag show that we talked about earlier in the season, they were the DJs a lot of the night, so I at least got to hang out with 9-4 and Cold Leroy, and that shit's fun. And I mean, there was a few times where Makes Waves was there, D-Marks was there, even Swiggle was there a couple times, so I did get to see and network. But overall, it was a piece of shit place, and I hated it. And Casa was still a fish at this time, and he invited one of his friends who lived just up the street, whose name was G-Tec, and G-Tec talked to me for that entire night we hung out, and he told me he juggled fire, he told me he skateboarded, he told me he had a dog named Fish, and I damn near feel like he became a fish before the end of that night. Like, he was one of the few people, I think, I'd met him, and he was immediately a fish, and we were rocking together. Me, G-Tec, and Casa rolled around during this time. I even think at one point, Lil Tracy was playing the Paris Theater kind of around this time, and all the tickets sold out really quickly. And we had been playing the Paris Theater so much that I had built up a relationship with the security and the bartenders, and they were like, "You're not performing tonight." When I rolled up, and I was like, "Yeah, can you get us in?" And they did, and it was one of those early moments where you're like, "Man, I'm kind of famous, not super famous, but for sure it's coming with benefits finally." But yeah, so G-Tec just magically appeared and was very, very intensely a part of it. And then sort of towards the end of the year, I believe it was December, like 27th or 28th. I'll look it up, and maybe I'll look it up and correct it. A lot of the times I forget to do that. Who gives a... You guys don't care. Come on. You're here for the ride and the bipolar sporadicness in which it is narrated. But around this time, Swiggle got us on the Mike Jones show. He got La Familia on the Mike Jones show. And all the members of La Familia had to sell a certain amount of tickets. I don't remember how much it was in order to perform with him. And then he had a big chunk of the tickets. And I got mine off quick as fuck. That show was fucking insane. I think I think the Paris Theater capacity was a couple hundred. And it sold out online, and we sold out of tickets, and the other artists sold out of tickets as well. And Jimbo had sent me maybe 2 or 3 beats by now, I'm pretty sure. And I had just started writing to him and was getting ready to record to them right at the end of December. I saw him there because he was with Dirty Black's group, Trunk Mob. He was producing their songs as well. So that was the first time I got to talk to Jimbo after I saw him at that one show, and he had messaged me a little bit online. I got to talk to him in person for a second. And I got my sister and Young Ned there to just support me and a few other people. And right before we go on stage, Swiggle grabs me by my shoulders and goes, "Listen, there's nothing I can do. I've tried to push it back. You're going to have to walk on the stage right now. But your sister and Young Ned got stuck outside because the venue's at capacity. And I know that doesn't make sense because they bought tickets, but there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to go out there." And I just said okay and walked out on stage. And Swiggle started with his song. And then him and Timmy did a song. And then maybe him and Justin Joy did a song. And halfway through their song, I saw them at the front of the door waving at me. But they were still outside. And then my song with Swiggle started, and I saw them sprinting towards the front of the stage. So they narrowly fucking made it in time to see the performance, but they did. And my sister and young Ned were crying that night almost because they were outside and people were talking about, like, did you see Figure Eight is here? Like, talking about me like I was my own entity in a way they hadn't heard before, not just like Michael. And then someone said, yeah, that's his sister. And people like swarmed my sister and were like, oh my God, your Figure Eight sister. Like, it was a really cool moment for her to see that this hadn't been such an enormous waste of time. And then I think probably 2 days or so after that show, I got 3 face tattoos at once. Muffin came with me and filmed the whole thing, took some pictures. I don't know if we have that anywhere, but that did happen. It was content at a time. I got this bird on my face, DJ's name, and a spider. I think all at the same time. I think. Maybe it was the 8. I'm not sure, but it was for sure the bird and DJ. And yeah, I don't know what part about this year made me do that. Maybe it was the drugs I was on, or maybe the bipolar was really kicking in, but it just felt like it would force me to have to do this. My whole life, people told me it was a phase, or I'd get over it, or this, that, and the other thing. And I still do to an extent, but not as much. But I really used to feel like I had something to prove to people, and I was trying to prove it. And I don't know if I was trying to prove people right or wrong with that one. And I think you do both when you don't have a real reason for why you're doing something. I have no regrets. I love my tattoos. I'll get more right now. But sometimes I do wonder, did I do that to prove everyone right? Like, look at me, I am exactly what you thought I was. Or was it one of those things where it's like, you thought I was going to stop making music eventually, and look at me now. Good luck me stopping doing that and going and getting a regular job. And directly after that, I booked, so many studio sessions right in a row. And I recorded, I think, 6 songs for a project, and I didn't know what to call it, but I wanted to be done. And I thought about how before Eminem made the Slim Shady LP, he made the Slim Shady EP, and that didn't really come out, but I mean it did, but not widely released, and a lot of those songs ended up on his first album, the Slim Shady LP. So I figured it would be a cool little homage to call like my first little EP the Lil Fidget EP, because he had the Slim Shady blah 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 blah. And I took those 6 songs, and I believe Muffin produced almost all of them. JC rapped on one of the songs, but that was the only feature. And yeah, it's okay. I went back and listened to it. It's definitely ahead of Strange Places and My Lizard Died, and maybe even in listenability, Fig and Swig for me. But it's certainly still not very good. But I do see the change. And All Night was not on there. It did not make it on there. I wasn't done getting it ready, and I wanted to, I don't know. I wanted to save it for something better. So, the point of the tape was kind of just to have something out that was my own, because I had already deleted Strange Places by the time this was approaching for sure. And My Lizard Died, that garbage wasn't on my SoundCloud, so I couldn't do anything about that. So I just wanted something other than the drugs and stuff EP to really represent me. And this was where I felt like I expressed myself the most honestly. I was trying to be funny on the songs, but I was trying to be vulnerable and sad. It was the first time I really was working with Muffin closely since Ellis had left. And yeah, I really just wanted to make a little stamp. And I feel like potentially I did. There was a lot of those songs that I performed for a long time. A lot of those songs got videos. A lot of people talked to me about that tape, and I really feel like it motivated me to move into that next year with, like, we are a rap group. This is going to happen. This is how I feel about it. Yeah, so I'll probably stop right about there. And I think the next episode I'm going to go through and just fill in as much gaps as I could, round the story out, and then we'll start getting guests on here. So before you interrupt me, as always, Let me finish.
I didn't think that we'd make it this far.